You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Queen's Podcast. I'm Amanda Mata, the host of the Art of History podcast, and I'm also that chick who talks way too much about the royal family on TikTok. On behalf of Katie and Nathan, I'm here to advise you that they've been known to use many a colorful metaphor and, yes, strong language. If that's not your style, they won't be mad, just back away slowly. If you're interested in hearing stories from the past told through some really cool works of art, I hope you'll check out Art of History wherever you get your podcasts. But for now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Katie.
And this is Nathan.
And you're listening to Queens, the podcast about badass women in history.
Hey guys!
Happy New Year, Nathan!
Woo woo!
Oh my god, it is our first episode of 2022.
I know, and I wish it was on a happier note.
I know. Since the last time we left you guys, we lost a legend.
Legend is the word.
It's the craziest thing. We went on Patreon a couple of weeks ago and asked the Patreon supporters, to vote for the first episode of 2022. And then an event happened. And we went on to Patreon and was like, hey, we know you guys voted for this one queen,
but we have to make some room for our lovely gal.
All of our Patreon supporters with a resounding, everyone agreed, yes, you have to cover this queen. So before we start out the episode with who is she, why don't we say who she's not, Nathan?
Yeah, right? She accomplished so much shit in her life.
I know.
What was she not? She wasn't a criminal.
No.
She wasn't a bigot.
No.
She wasn't homophobic.
Definitely not.
Pretty much everything we love here at Queen's Podcast, right?
She was very much in our, she had all the qualities that we adore here in this show. Not to mention she was a producer, a writer, an actor, a mentor, an activist. Nathan, who are we talking about today?
It pains me to say it, but it's Betty White.
Yeah, of course it's Betty White, who we lost.
I'm already cheersing.
Yeah.
I'm already cheersing you right now.
We are recording this on January 9th. We, of course, lost her. I guess the world has been without her 10 days now.
10 days too many.
She was the queen of TV. Some called her the queen of sitcoms. Some called her the queen of game shows. Could call her the queen of America's heart.
Everything.
Oh, God. So, of course, we're going to talk today about the legendary Betty White.
So, what we're drinking today is what one of her friends described as her favorite drink. Mm-hmm. She did like vodka and lemon, which, #same.
Yeah.
Just lots of vodka on the rocks with lemon, but she also liked a martini. And if there's some gal that I've got to make a martini for, it's gonna be fucking Betty White.
Love it.
So 2.5 ounces of vodka, a half an ounce of dry vermouth, half an ounce of olive juice, but if you like it dirty, you add another half an ounce or two of some olive juice, because I like olive juice. I'm weird. And then you just fucking shake it. You shake it on the rocks. And then pour it in a nice martini glass and fucking cheers, bitches.
The Dirty Betty cocktail. Love it.
Dirty Betty. Yas, queen.
So, just like every other January since we've done this podcast, Katie is doing dry January.
Boo.
So, I know. But y'all, my liver is going, yay. Over the holidays, my liver was like, girl, please. Fucking water.
Please
so
stop.
I'm doing So I am being a responsible queen and listening to my liver. But I love
listening to my liver. I need that on a
listening
t-shirt.
to my liver. I love a dirty martini. I can drink
too.
olive juice on its own. So I didn't want to miss out. Okay, I went online and was looking for alternatives. And there are a lot of like non-alcoholic vodkas out there, but they're expensive and I'd have to order online and nothing was going to get here in time. So I found a recipe that suggested replacing the vodka with boiled potato water. So that's what I've done.
I mean, that makes sense.
And then instead of vermouth,
vodka's made from potatoes, right?
Exactly. And then instead of vermouth, I just did olive juice and then added a little bit of lemon juice and the rest as is. So
sounds like it could be.
I haven't tasted it yet. I'm not anticipating loving it, so I've also made myself a lemon tea.
I wish you could see her face. I wish you could see her face right now. She's like, I haven't tasted it yet.
I've also made myself a lemon flavored tea as a backup. So, all right, let's see. Let's see what this potato Dirty Betty tastes like.
I love a Dirty Betty.
Okay, I don't hate it.
Okay,
I don't hate it. I think it's because I love. I mean, I would never go to a bar and be like, "Please get me
some potato water."
Potato water.
I demand you boil some potatoes right now.
I don't hate it. The funny thing, because I like a medium, like, oh, I don't hate it, but once I drink some more, I'll like it some more, and then I'm like, wait, that only works with alcohol.
Wah, wah.
But now I also have boiled potatoes that I can make mashed potatoes for dinner tonight with. I think Betty would have loved that. She was a resourceful bitch. She would have loved it.
Okay, now time for some Patreon shout-outs. So we've got Carrie, Anna Maria, Kelly, Savina,
Brooke, Delana. Welcome back, Delana.
Love you.
Another Kelly, Andrea, and Jill. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast. Thank you to all our Patreon supporters and everyone that listens to the show. So, Nathan, are you ready to get into the fabulous life of Betty White?
You ain't got to get ready if you stay ready.
Why don't you get us started?
So, Betty Marion White was born January 17th, 1922 in Oak Park, Illinois. So, she's a Capricorn, if you're taking notes here. Lots of mental and physical stamina, not afraid to put themselves out there, and always trust their instincts. So, I mean, really,
this is our girl.
This is our girl,
yeah.
Right? This is her. Her parents, let's get into our 1920s realness. Their names were Horace, which is like my grandpa's name, Horace White and Christine Tess. Daddy-O was an electrical engineer, which may come in handy, and Mom was a homemaker.
A lot of people think that, the name Betty, that's usually short for Elizabeth or something.
Yeah.
But her legal name at birth was Betty. She was
this was her first major scandal. was her name Betty or was it Elizabeth? Oh my God. Some people really think it was Elizabeth, but I mean the birth certificates don't lie.
Yeah.
Her name is Betty.
I wish my parents would have just named me a short, because like my name is actually Catherine. And, like, I have to remind myself when I go to, like, the DMV or the doctor's office, they're not going to call Katie. They're going to call Catherine. Because, like, sometimes when people call Catherine, I'm like, I wish this Catherine. So, like, if you're just going to call them a nickname, just name them the nickname. I don't know.
When she was little over 1 year old, so she was, like, 1.5, the Whites pack up and move on west to the suburbs of Los Angeles. Don't worry, this isn't like babies need jobs situation. Like
her mom was not being a stage mom. They just moved out west because that's where the money was.
Babies still don't need jobs.
Babies don't need jobs. Babies don't need babies.
So they weren't pushing her to do anything. They need to move west. They need to live a new life, right?
That's where the money was, yeah. Which might be important, being that this is the late 1930s, and
I see where this is going.
Think back to your history lessons. What was happening in the late 1930s?
It's real depressing.
But
and it's great. It's called the Great Depression.
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to like. Everyone
was broke.
Depression.
Let's eat cardboard. No, the U.S. history, late 20s to mid 30s. I think I misspoke earlier. Late 20s to mid 30s is the Great Depression, and everyone was depressed because they didn't have any fucking money.
No, and all jokes aside, this is like a huge bummer in like world history. Like everything crashed. Everything was off. Nobody had food. Nobody had money. And
you hear some really heartbreaking stories of the Great Depression. I think I've read stories about like mothers that couldn't afford to feed all their children, so they literally like sold their children to like farms that needed farm hands and stuff like that, and people were like scraping the wallpaper off the wall to have something to eat. Like,
God,
it was a very, very dark time, which actually sent me down rabbit hole number 1.
Not surprised.
Yes. Because like in history class, whenever we were in high school and stuff, we only learned about it from like a U.S. standpoint, but the Great Depression was international. Mr. Worldwide, much like Pitbull. Yeah.
Did you go there?
I'm sorry. No, but the international decline of the economy like really hit Germany before it even hit the US, which actually had to do with like the rise of the unsettled population bringing in Hitler. Yeah,
like I knew this was coming. I mean, I've researched Betty White. Like I've researched.
You knew Hitler was going to come in the early 20th century. What a surprise!
It just. Sorry.
Let me dig myself out of that rabbit hole. Back to Betty White and everybody
So
being poor.
What we're getting at is everybody poor, except at least in Betty's retelling of her childhood. Like it wasn't that bad. They didn't suffer that too much.
Yeah.
Like. Dad, she said she was spoiled, like, in her childhood. Like, she said it.
So unless she is just painting a rosy picture, it seems like her parents really sheltered her from the hardships that were going on.
She was a kid, so of course you shelter them from that, right? Like,
but not all children, I think, had the luxury of being sheltered from it.
Touche. So... like we said, her dad was an electrical engineer, which pretty much can be used in a lot of facets here.
Yeah.
Like, her dad was able to feed his family by selling crystal radios. Okay.
It sounds like something that would be sold in Goop, if I'm being honest.
Okay, so Betty White's not a witch.
Okay. Or is she?
This
biography just took a new turn. Was Betty White a witch? You heard it here on Queen's Podcast.
She's a witch. So a crystal radio is run on crystals that produce radio waves. So crystal radio makes sense. So her dad was a witch. Queen's Podcast statement. Her dad was a witch.
Yes, Betty White was a witch. End of episode. Good night, guys. Dad would make these radios and trade them for things like food and stuff. But if there was a family that was in need and they couldn't pay or they didn't have anything to barter and they needed a radio, he would trade them for dogs.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Which really helped the families in need because I think Betty White in her biography said something like, radios don't eat, but dogs do. So it would kind of be like one less mouth to feed for these families.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I read something at one point they had like 20-something dogs.
Yes! I love
which
this.
Like, sign
I mean,
me
a little
up.
too much. Yeah, sign me up if I have the property to do that on.
Right.
Right now, I don't know if I could house 20 dogs.
Yeah. Betty was her parents' only kid, and she was really close to both of them, though she would joke sometimes she wondered if they were disappointed that she wasn't a dog or a cat. But Betty would also say that her mother had this impeccable comedic timing, which tracks. This tracks.
No, it absolutely tracks. That's one thing about Betty, that she's got that timing.
Yes.
So in her memoir, If You Ask Me, Betty talks about how every summer her family would go and visit in Sierra Nevada. So
like she had cousins and aunts and uncles out there.
Yeah, they would all go out camping. This is not glamping. They had donkeys.
Yes.
I mean, that is not glamping if you've got donkeys.
No.
I don't need a whole lot of ass. I went there. So she talks about taking all these donkeys down to the campsite. You couldn't take your car down there. So,
yeah,
I mean, this was a
You
trek.
had to take a donkey down there, and they would stay at the campsites in tents for 3 weeks each summer.
Yeah, Katie is not about it at all.
I looked up Sierra Nevada. It looks beautiful. I found some Airbnbs nearby with a great view that I would love to go to, but I'm not doing this. I don't sleep outside, and especially not for 3 weeks straight.
You peasants.
No, to each their own. I'm just really scared of like creepy crawlies.
Oh, okay. I mean, scorpions are a thing. Scorpions and snakes and beetles. Oh my.
Oh my.
But Betty White, unlike Katie, loved these trips.
Love.
So Dad was a huge lover of nature, and she's super duper close to her parents. So she just did whatever they did. You know what I mean?
She loved whatever made them happy. Yeah, these trips meant a lot to her because for the rest of her life, or the rest of her young life at least, she dreamed of having one job. Nathan, what was her dream job growing up?
Actress is what I would say.
No, she wanted to be a park ranger or a forest ranger.
Like, what?
Because of these trips and like her dad's just passion for nature, and she grew to love it. And so she's thinking, well, I want to work to preserve nature for the next generations, so I'm going to become a forest ranger.
But guess what, guys? Bag of dicks. Women can't be forest rangers.
Even forestry was a bag of dicks back then.
Women can't wear camo.
I don't think forest rangers wear camo, Nathan.
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do. But I've never thought, I guess because I've never thought about the credentials of being a forest ranger in the 1940s or 30s or whatever. But yeah, women weren't allowed that career path.
Gross. So she attended Beverly Hills High School, so probably grew up all around those high school kiddos we know, like Brenda and
90210 gang, yeah.
And but for real, it wasn't quite as glamorous.
No, not yet at least.
No, it's the Great Depression. Sorry.
Yeah. But she got really into the arts. And tell us, Nathan.
She ended up writing her senior play for the class of 1939. She wrote herself as the lead role and narrator.
She's like, I am the writer, I am the lead actress, I am the narrator. The rest of you get in line.
I fucking love this for her.
I love it too, yes.
Like, what? Just write yourself in. Write yourself into the play.
We see you. We see you, Betty. We are you. As soon as she graduated high school, she tried to enter showbiz immediately. She started singing songs for this new experimental medium called television.
Ooh.
TV was still in its infancy.
We all know those commercials, right?
Yeah,
like the 60s commercials, like, ooh, Ah. So this type of work was like experimental.
Yeah.
Because people didn't really know what this like electronic box that
Right.
sat in your living room, like what?
Yeah, it was like people were literally like, why do we need radio with pictures? And also her first gig singing on TV, the broadcast only like reached to down the street or something like that. Like when we talk about local TV, it was like within the building local. Like it wasn't
like in the premise.
yeah. So her first gig wasn't, like gonna make her a star. It was like gonna be like, oh, people in the building might know who I am.
Oh,
Ooh.
fancy that. But Betty hopped around from job to job for a couple of years. She graduated in 1939, and she just went from odd job to odd job. Like, she tried to be a model, and they told her she wasn't photogenic enough.
Fuck that, because she was
right?
like that smile, those dimples, like,
that face. Like, seriously.
she was so cute. Like, go back and look at pictures of Betty White in, like her younger years.
Adorable.
I have to assume, like, she had kind of more of like a square jaw, and I
Yeah.
guess like a lot of the starlets of the time maybe were a little
Skinny.
bit. Well, I mean, she was
jaw,
thin, like maybe just
But
I don't know,
like a thinner jaw.
like a thin face, maybe a more oval face or something
Yeah.
like that. But she wasn't not photogenic. She was
okay. She
adorable.
was photogenic until like she died. Like she's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Anyway, we can. I feel like that could be a whole rant. So let's move
Yes,
on.
it could. But she was a commercial model.
Yeah.
So she back then in commercials and TV weren't quite what they are today. Commercials, they did live. Like they went on and said, hey, this new food, like they literally Vanna White it in front of you.
Yeah. And so she would be the girl and like, cause like you said, they would literally be like in the middle of their scene and be like, and now a word from our sponsors, and just turn around and there was a model being a sponsor.
And it was Betty White.
And
so
it was.
I wish this was the part where we talk about her career just taking off and Betty White just goes into oblivion. She will later. But it's not.
No.
Sorry, guys. This is World War II and Hitler is a thing. And it's the Great Depression and now it's war. Ugh. Good God, y'all.
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. So she graduated in 1939 and entered the war in 1941. And it's like everyone's career was put on hold at that point.
Like who's thinking about acting when Hitler is out there Hitlering,
Yeah, killing people.
You gotta stop.
Horrible. You gotta drop what you're doing and fight for the greater good. I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah.
So Betty felt like she needed to do her part. Our girl volunteered to support the troops. She hopped in a big ass truck and drove essentials to the troops stationed in Santa Monica and Hollywood, of course. And by essentials, I mean like toothpaste, soap, and candy.
You heard it first. Essential candy.
I mean, I gotta have my Snickers bar.
She also did these. I thought this was really cute. You know how like when troops are stationed away, the USO, like Bob Hope, would like go out and do little shows and sketches. She did that like kind of on the local level. Her and the other girls would put on little sketches for the troops, and then they would also like attend farewell dances for the boys that were about to get shipped off. And so she would just be charming and drive a big truck, and that's what she was doing for her war effort,
I love her. Making everybody smile since 1941
or whatever. And she looks adorable.
1921 when she was born.
And she looks adorable in her little army getup.
I bet so. Like,
she's just as cute as
she's not photogenic. Like, fuck you.
Get the fuck out of here. Anyway.
So while serving, someone else noticed that she was cute. Her first husband named Dick. Dick Barker. You have to say it with a Rue McClanahan.
Yeah.
So they married in 1945 and they divorced in 1945.
Oh, cool.
But he was a country guy, and after the war, he bought a chicken farm, and wanted to just live off the land. I know that kind of guy. Like,
And Betty's a nature lover and an animal lover. So at first,
nothing wrong with that.
At first, she was like, that sounds really nice. And then she got there and she was like, good God, what have I done? She's a city girl.
Yeah, just a small town girl.
Not LA, not really a small town.
She's a big town girl.
Yes, exactly.
She's
she
living
loved
a big
camping.
World.
She loved camping, but I think once she got there, she realized, I like camping 3 weeks out of the year.
I don't like chickens everywhere.
I don't. I can't live this way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so, divorce kind of controversial back then.
Mm-hmm.
Most circles back then, women that were divorced in the 40s, oh my gosh, social suicide.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was smart of her to get out of the marriage. I don't think it was super smart of her to think that she was ever going to be happy in that life. But we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
I just applaud her for not just like folding to societal demands and being like, well, I've got to stay with it and have kids, and then living a life where she wasn't going to be happy. She said in her memoir that she never had kids. And she is from a different time, so I don't necessarily agree with this. And she said in her memoir, she was like, a lot of women of modern day are not going to agree with me on this, but in my eyes, I could either be a mother and give 100% to that, or I could have a career and give 100% to that. I was never going to be able to do both. And she chose a career. And that's right for some people,
No, that is 100% what I got from her. This entire research is she knew that she wasn't going to be a mother. She was going to mother her career.
Yes. And be a mother to hundreds of animals in her life. But anyway,
right.
Her parents took her back in. Like, she moved back in with her parents, which also I think just goes to show again how supportive they were and how tight-knit, because there were a lot of parents back then that would have been like, no, you are divorced.
Bye.
You are not bringing that shame upon this family. But her parents took her back in, and it doesn't seem to have been drama. So,
right.
Cool.
After the war, Betty was ready. Betty was ready. She hit the movie studios. She pursued her dream of being an actress. Besides Forest Ranger. Well, we'll let that one slide.
Women couldn't be forest rangers, but they could be famous actresses, and that's what she wanted to do.
So that's what she did. She was doing whatever fucking job that she could, even unpaid word. Like, her first post-divorce job was at Bliss Hayden Little Theater in a show called Dear Ruth. An actor...
Can't say that I've heard of it.
No, me neither. An actor turned agent named Lane Allen saw her and told her that she needed to pursue acting more seriously.
And she's like, yeah, dude, that's what I'm trying to do.
She's like, duh. Do you not see me over here on this stage? Yeah, she liked what he said. In fact, she liked Lane so much that flames on the side of her face. In 1947, she married him. That's a big leap from like agent to marriage.
Yeah.
But it seems like this was a little bit more of a love match than the first one, to be honest with you.
It worked longer, but just slightly. It worked slightly longer than the first one.
Well, I mean, moral of the story, Lane wanted kids, Betty wanted a career. We just talked about this. So that was Betty's decision, was like, no, I want a career. And so they divorced by 1949, and this is the late 40s, like 50s era, and you want
a career?
What?
What?
Is your uterus sucking up all the blood that's
Honey,
making your
honey, your
brain fuzzy?
uterus must be really you're not thinking straight. You want a job?
You're on your period.
You must be on your
Obviously.
period real bad
You
to
want a job?
No.
And independence. Ugh.
I do think that this probably, because this is her second divorce and she's like not even in her 30s yet, that this probably put a bitter taste in her mouth towards romantic relationships, thinking no man is ever going to want to allow me to love me and allow me to pursue my passions. And so I think for the next long time, she's like, I'm just not even going to fuck around with dating. I'm not going to fuck around with love because I can't have career and a relationship too, which is really sad. But for the time, that's what all signs were pointing to. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's true. But Betty was still hustling to get her big break. Whether it's radio, theater, that weird boxy thing called TV, she was going to make it some way, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally got her big break in a commercial during the hit radio comedy show called The Great Gildersleeve.
Oh, yeah, Gildersleeve. Duh.
Sounds like a laugh riot. Our girl, Betty, literally just uttered one word for the commercial and everybody was hooked. And it was parquet.
What the fuck is parquet?
So, parquet is a margarine. Back in the day, they were like, oh, butter's bad for you. Try margarine. And parquet is the margarine. And so she literally...
It just makes me think of parkour! Parkour!
Oh my gosh. So after this, bit parts are rolling in because she's that girl that could just show up and be like, parquet, and just say one word.
And everyone's just like, that was delightful.
I love her. Like, that is legit her brand, right? Like,
Parquet
she
Betty.
Can say, Parquet Betty. So Betty tried breaking through to the movies, but again, she's quote unquote not photogenic,
which I guess means she's not pretty enough. Which, are you fucking serious?
She's gorgeous.
She's just so adorable. Back, in like the 30s and 40s, these like starlets that if you're comparing her next to like Vivian Leigh or something, okay, she didn't look like Vivian Leigh, but who the fuck does look like Vivian Leigh? Right. Or oh, who's Mommy Dearest? No More Wire. Joan Crawford. Yeah, she doesn't look like these people, but she looks like the girl next door. But if you fast forward into like the 50s, the late 40s and the 50s, the girl next door ends up being a very popular prototype. I mean, just look at Debbie Reynolds, Right. That's why she's not getting that. I don't think anybody thought she was ugly, but saying like you're not photogenic enough was just their nice way of saying that you're not like glamorous. You know what I mean?
Bitches. So she tried her hand at this little silver screen TV thing and started co-hosting a variety show, which would go on to set the stage for the rest of her career, actually.
Yeah.
So remember how we said that TV was like in an experimental phase, and you couldn't see me, but you could see me doing that right now, right, listeners? Like I quoted it,
quote unquote.
So this variety show is a really good example of her career. Like, wildly popular DJ named Al Jarvis was given a TV show, and they call it Hollywood on Television.
So by the time that Betty joined this show, it had already been like a wildly popular radio show that they changed to a TV show, and they were just like, we need a girl. And I guess Betty just happened to be the right place at the right time. She's like, I do happen to be a girl.
And I want to make money.
And they were like, oh, it's the butter girl, the margarine chick. Yeah, sure. Parquet. Come on. And yeah, Nathan, tell us about the recording schedule for television or Hollywood on Television.
5.5 hours a day. Like, I love you, Katie, but if I had to record with you for 5.5 hours, I would still love you after all of it.
But how many days a week?
My God. 6 days. Like,
6
only one day off.
days a week, 5.5. I know we all work, 40 hours a week or whatever, but this is like recording. It's like live TV for 5.5 hours a day,
Ugh.
6 days. And nobody knew what to do. So they would have, they'd play the records and just like everybody just sitting there listening to the records. Then they would be like, I guess we're going to have like a magician on, a tap dancer. And then somebody one day turned to Betty and was like, can you sing? And she was like, I can sing.
Can
I? And so then it also became a reoccurring feature where she would sing on episodes just because you had to fill 5.5 hours 6 days a week.
Full of shit. Yeah.
Somehow.
This is a huge career move for Betty at this point. She is making money, honey.
No more unpaid bit parts anymore for Miss White.
Yeah, and then Al Jarvis ended up leaving the show. And in 1952, Betty decided to host the show her damn self.
Yes! When Al Jarvis was there, she was making $50 a week. When he left, she was making $300 a week. That roughly comes out to $300 a week in modern day would be making about $200,000 a year, which for a TV star now isn't a whole lot. But for a girl who has been twice divorced, living with her parents, to now be like this out of nowhere, this self-sufficient working actress was fucking huge for her, is what we're getting.
I know. And she was the first female talk show host. Yeah, and she was even nominated for an Emmy for Best Actress. So, fun fact, Emmys are not what you think about today. Like, Emmys were your body of work throughout the year as opposed to like this one show.
I thought that was really interesting because now when somebody's nominated, you're nominated because of
Elizabeth Moss in The Handmaid's Tale. Like, it's not her whole year's worth of work.
It's
just that.
I thought that was really interesting.
But she didn't win. But it's cool. She'll win one another day, bitch. She's got plenty of time.
She and a friend that also worked on Hollywood on Television with her, they start a production company called Bandy Productions. They decided to make their own show. There was this reoccurring sketch on their current show about this married couple who would like get into shenanigans and just cute little sketch show. So they made that into its own TV show.
Life
Betty
with Elizabeth
was one of the executive producers, which she wasn't the first woman to produce a television show ever, but she was definitely one of the first. And she actually had creative control over that show, which, I mean, until Lucille Ball, for a woman to star, produce, and get creative control, that wasn't really a done thing. So I just think that is so, so cool.
Yeah, Lucille Ball, Desilu Productions was in 1957. And so it's like 5 years after Betty White had her own production studio. So
simmer on that. Her and Lucille Ball would actually go on to be very good friends. They had a lot in common. Yeah.
Friends. Of course. Strong, powerful women who know what the fuck is funny. Yes. So Life with Elizabeth was syndicated across the country, and the country fell in love with this like bubbly, hilarious Betty White. Like, I remember looking at scenes from it, and she would just cut that look. She's
just got this sparkle in her eye. Because she's supposed to play this wife that's like always getting into trouble, very of its time. But like, she just has this way of captivating people and just being like, she's fucking adorable.
Yeah, I know. It's that little glint, that little twinkle.
the country fell in love with her. One quote that I thought was really cute of hers is she was like, actually, I prefer being a TV star to a movie star, because when you're a TV star, you're in people's homes every day. And so they feel like they know you. They feel like you're approachable, as opposed to whenever you're a film star, they don't feel like they know you because you're not in their homes. You're, on the big screen, and it feels so much more intimidating. So she loved that people felt connected to her in that way.
I totally, I see that. Like, if you were to see a movie star, you'd be like, oh. If you were to see a TV star, you'd be like, hey,
I binge watch you
feel like
all
I
the
know
time.
you.
Yeah, exactly. But Nathan, what did this show bring Betty in 1952?
An Emmy. Yes. So we don't want to spend an entire episode talking about every single show that Betty would ever be in and every single moment of her life, because it would be a 3-hour show.
A 3-hour show. So we don't want to spend the entire episode just naming off all the shows she was on and all the awards she won, because then it would just literally be a show of us listing off names of shows. So we're gonna just kind of like a show of shows. So we're just gonna hit like the high points, like the things that really solidified her career. So the next big talking point was Betty White got a show called The Betty White Show in 1953. They were like, Betty, this is going to take a lot out of you, because it's going to be every day for 30 minutes every day. So 30 minutes 5 times a week. And she was like...
and she laughed.
I don't know who the fuck you think you're talking to.
I did 5.5 hours per day.
I think I can handle. Ooh, no, not 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
So this was a big deal because Betty, still being a woman, she has a uterus. Oh my God. She had total creative control.
Again, except this time even more, because it's her name on the title of the show.
Yeah, and she even hired a female director.
Love it.
Betty was in her element. Like, she would go out and quote unquote warm up, which would later be a dispute between her and B. Arthur. So she would warm up in front of the audience and get the audience hyped. So she's giving a live performance and she's the star and she's going out there and hyping up the audience.
Yeah, if you go to like the Jimmy Fallon show today or something, before Jimmy comes out, they'll usually send a comedian out to get everybody, get them
riled
going,
up,
get them in the mood. Yeah. But for Betty to go out and do it on their own, people were like, you don't have to do this. But she enjoyed it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So sadly, the show didn't last long and actually earned Betty her first controversy, besides her name not being Elizabeth.
So, okay, her second controversy.
Remember, this is like 1950s pre-civil rights, deep Jim Crow South bullshit. And Betty had a tap dancer and singer named Arthur Duncan on as a regular person. And Duncan happened to be a black man, and in the South, this was a super unpopular move because racism.
Have you gone back and watched the videos of Arthur Duncan performing on the Betty White show?
He is amazing.
He is so fucking cute. I could just kiss him.
He's
just cute,
talented, can sing, can dance, can do all of it. Why not put him on a TV show?
He's entertaining as hell to watch. And that's exactly what Betty was like. She didn't get the controversy at all. And the NBC, the station that she was on, they told her, they were like, having Arthur on is hurting ratings in the South. And it's so hurting ratings overall. And they advised her, have him on less. And she was like, oh, I hear you, but I'm going to have him on more now because he is super talented and fuck you hoes,
I'm raising the roof right now, if y'all don't know, because she literally was like, no, He's talented. He's amazing. And it just so happens that he's black. Like, that has no bearing on how talented and amazing this person is.
Her exact quote of the time was, "I'm sorry, deal with it. Or live with it.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Live with it."
Yes. So she dropped her mic, is what Katie was saying.
Yes.
The show was canceled after 2 years, but Betty never regretted that decision. She
definitely ended up on the right side of history.
Yeah, she ended up being a huge advocate for racial injustice and all of that. Like, she was very, very good activist on that. So,
and Arthur Duncan, who would go on to have a very successful career as a dancer, to this day still credits Betty White for his like jumping off point of his career.
So Betty snapped and pivot. So she pivoted, and she knew that she was really good at hosting shows, especially variety shows. So she knew how to like interview people, but now she was going to be on the other side of it. Like, televised game shows were becoming a huge thing.
Yes, in like the 60s, that really took off as a platform of entertainment, televised. And I love the Game Show Network.
We both warmed up for this episode by watching game shows with Betty White on them. So they're huge.
And I love the Game Show Network. I love watching game
Me
shows.
too.
Anyway, I would love, Nathan, I really want to one day put together a team to go on Family Feud.
Oh.
Would you ever consider going on Family Feud with me?
Yes. Like, how many game shows
so
could
good.
we be on together? That would be horrible.
Oh my God.
The Amazing Race, we'd be just yelling at each other, and you would be like,
no,
dyslexia, and you'd be screaming at the map.
I can't read the map! No. Or just, I can't read!
No,
I'm not. I would be so bad at that one. But Family Feud, I think I'd be really good on. Complete caveat that, or like side conversation that I can leave in for the Patreon supporters. I was watching bloopers from Family Feud the other day, and there was like a celebrity Family Feud one. And you know how at the end, whenever it's like lightning round or whatever they call it, where it's just like you name off things. Well, it was Snoop Dogg, and the phrase was, finish this phrase, pie in the blank. And Sky had already been taken. So Snoop Dogg had to say something, and he said pie in the horse. And just watching Steve Harvey react, like, I think Steve Harvey just like sat down, like, pie in the horse.
What? Where did that come from? Anyway,
yes. Whenever we go on Podcaster Family Feud, we are going to do a lot better than Snoop Dogg.
Maybe.
Anyway. Maybe. Anyway. But no, this was a great medium for her because she is charming. She is funny. She is quick-witted. And I think the quick-witted had a lot to do with her success on continuing to be invited back on to talk shows and game shows.
I mean, this made her a household name. Like, have you watched Match Game and seen Betty White? Like, it's funny. Have you seen Password with Betty White? Like, she's awesome.
She is. And I mean, even into a couple of years before her death, she was still going on these like interview shows. People wanted to have her because she was always willing to roll with the gag. She was always committed to the bit, and she was so funny. And she talks about it in her book about like how important comedic timing is. She's like, time it just right and you'll always get a laugh. And I think she learned that from her mother.
I mean, okay, but when you watch the Golden Girls, like, all they have to do is cut a look to each other. And they just have to look at each other at the right moment and make the right facial expression. It's timing is everything.
I feel like that comedic timing is something that some people, I don't think it can always be taught. You know what I mean?
I know. I feel like you're talking about me.
Obviously. Clearly.
So,
anyway, back to
NBC noticed how much people liked having her in their homes. And they reached out to her and were like, hey, you want to host the Today Show?
Yo, I don't know if I've ever mentioned on this show before how much I grew up with the Today Show.
I know,
Growing
me
up, my
too.
mom had it on every morning whenever we were getting ready. I still, like, at Thanksgiving, I had Nathan and some friends over, and I was, like, talking about the Today Show, and I was like, well, Jenna and Savannah, and, like, literally everyone that was here was like, who are Jenna and Savannah? And I was like,
My BFFs.
they're hosts on the Today Show. I had no idea that they had offered, like, Betty White hosting the Today Show was ever something that was discussed. I was shooketh. Huge different. But she said no. She said no
But
because
guess-
she didn't want to move to New York.
Guess who said yes? Like, there was one other lady that we made know of, Barbara Walters.
How different would those two career paths look right now?
Well, Barbara wouldn't
if-
have one, and Betty White would have.
It just blew my mind. It just absolutely blew my mind just how different things would be for Barbara Walters if Betty White would have taken that job. What they say, the reason she turned it down was completely because she was like, I don't want to live in New York. I'm an LA girl. I'm not moving to New
I
York.
love it.
Which, from somebody that comes from a place that is sunny and hot, if you tried to get me to move to New York, I'd be
No.
hesitant as
Like,
well.
negative.
It gets cold there.
Katie looks disgusted.
Ew.
So, while Betty was making her name as the queen of game shows, she appeared on the show called Password. Password was hosted by a guy named Alan Ludden, who just lost his wife like a year before they met, and the two of them hit it off like crazy.
Their on-screen chemistry, it was obvious.
Yeah, literally soon after their first date, he literally said, I'm gonna marry you. Whoop! Love bomb.
Betty, he did kind of love bomb her, and Betty was kind of not into it. Like, she cared about him and she liked spending time with him and she liked dating him. But remember, her last two marriages had been like, no, you can't have a career on top of being a wife.
And she was a quote unquote career woman back in the day. And it was
Yeah.
like, no, women can have jobs.
I get it. If you like, you just start seeing a guy and he's like, I'm going to marry you. I also get how it could be like, all right, take several seats, my man. You know, like, absolutely not. She liked him and everything, but she was a bit like, who do you think you are?
It was taped in New York too. And she just hated New York. She hated New York.
She didn't hate New
No.
York, but she didn't want to live there.
Yeah.
And he lived in New York and she lived in LA. And she was like, I also just turned down this huge career opportunity because I didn't want to live in New York. How's it going to look if I moved to New York for a man over my career? Like, I think she was just jaded
Yeah.
by
for sure.
love. And
For
so she just didn't, she thought he was going to want her to change.
She had like quote unquote 2 failed marriages, and it was like, he just
Yeah.
wasn't the right guy for you. But it was a different time. Like, so she was definitely
Right.
jaded at this point.
In most cases, we say no means no. You know,
Yes.
like
Absolutely. Queen's podcast statement.
no means no. So in most cases, if a girl says she doesn't want to marry you, don't love bomb her and walk away.
That didn't
But in
stop him.
this-
That didn't stop him at all.
I know, like while I was reading it, it was like, is this problematic? But it ended so nice that I guess it's fine. I
Right.
don't
He
know.
proposed.
This is the exception, not the rule. To
All right.
no
So
means
you
no.
teach to you don't teach to the exceptions.
Yes, exactly.
So Alan proposed 3 times. Like, I remember watching the documentary on Netflix. They have one on Netflix. Go watch it.
Yeah,
She
super cute.
literally was like, he just kept proposing over and over and over and over. He even like wore the wedding ring on a little necklace and was like, "You gonna marry me?" Like, would just literally, it's so
Yeah.
cute. It is so cute.
She'd walk into the building and be like, "Hey, Alan," and he'd be like, "Will you marry me?" And she's like, "Ugh, this again."
But the final time, he sent her a stuffed bunny on Easter with some earrings that were like sapphire and some shit. And then obviously had the ring on it because he knew that she could never say no to a cute, helpless, fuzzy little animal.
And that, I mean, it worked.
They were married. They got hitched.
She was in LA. He was in New York. She got the gift. She called him up and he said hello. And she said, I do.
Yeah, I think she just said, so I think in the documentary, the thing was, he was like, just say yes, just say yes, just say yes. And like, she called him up on that day and was like, yes. And she just said yes. And he was like, oh.
And so they were married a few months later in June 9th. I think it was, let's just say June 1963. Later on, Betty would say that her only real regret in life is resisting Alan at the beginning. She said, I lost that year. I could have had a whole another year with him.
I think she regretted that. She regretted
putting her pride in her career before Alan, but how was she going to know that he was going to go on to be the love of her life?
And how did she know she was going to go on to have a career like that?
Still, yeah.
Like, seriously.
The two of them had a very, very happy marriage. So while we're on a high note, let's take a quick break, top off our drinks, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Nathan, did you top off your dirty martini?
Yes, I did.
I've just gone to
straight
tea
now. Her potato water was not good.
It wasn't really doing it for me. It was fine, but
you were just drinking olive juice. Is what you were doing.
Basically. So I'm just on the tea train now.
So,
but anyways,
Betty packs her bags and she's ready to go. And she moves her two dogs.
What was that song? Is that a song, or did you just make something up?
Bags are packed and I'm ready to go. I'm standing
like an
here outside
song?
your door. I hate to realize it, I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back.
I'll be back again. Okay. Anyway.
Betty's like, is that a real song?
I didn't know if you were just like riffing, like skittery-bop-bop.
Maybe so. But Betty is on a jet plane, doesn't know when she'll be back again.
She takes her two dogs, and she's moving in with Alan and his 3 kids, and she moves to New York.
Yeah.
Like she said she never would.
Right. And then fate would have it that Password moves from New York to Los Angeles.
Woohoo! So she didn't have to live in New York very long.
Yeah, she got her way.
Yeah.
So they're an adorable TV power couple. Like, for sure.
Oh my God. It's so cute on the first episode of Password that she's on after their honeymoon. It's so cute, like, at the end of the episode. He's like, Betty, what's the password or something like that? And she goes, home, Alan. Take me home. Aww. It's so adorable. Yeah. But they were doing all kinds of guest starring roles.
The Love Boat. Sorry, I'm in a singing mood.
That's okay. The Odd Couple. They were on tons of talk shows together. I watched this one talk show that they were on together called Tattletale, which it's very much like the Newlyweds show, but I don't think you have to be newlyweds to be on it. And they were just so fucking cute together.
They were like, they riffed off of each other really well. Yeah. They were able to, like, I don't know. It was really
you could tell they were in love.
I know. Third time's the charm.
Yeah.
So in the early 70s, Betty's really good friend, Mary Tyler Moore,
maybe you've heard of her,
had one of the most popular TV shows, amazing writers. The writers in this show, I think, elevated TV in a way.
Did you ever watch the Mary Tyler Moore show?
Yes, it was genius.
Because when I was a kid, I fucking loved Nick at Night. I was not popular. I was not cool. And I was like really into Nick at Night. And so I remember loving the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but I haven't watched it since I was like 10 or something. And a lot of
I liked Nick at Night. I was really not popular.
I was not popular. I was bookish, to put it kindly. But I'm like, hey guys, did y'all watch I Dream of Jeannie last night?
I
And they're
love
like,
Lucy. I love Lucy. Come on, bitch.
But anyway, I didn't remember a whole lot of it. So this week, because it's on Hulu now, I watched a couple of Mary Tyler Moore shows, and I was expecting it to be so much cheesier, because a lot of older shows are cheesy when you watch them with like a modern gaze.
Lens, yeah.
And it still fucking slaps. It's a fucking hilarious show. There are some outdated stuff on it, of course, but it's really funny.
I know, and they wrote this character named Sue Ann. And spoiler-ish alert, Sue Ann is based, like, Blanche from Golden Girls is actually based on Sue Ann.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit.
We'll get to it. But Sue Ann, they wrote this new character for her. She's this older homemaker. She's super duper happy, but she's real slutty. And that's what is amazing. Like,
it's so funny.
Genius.
If you've never watched it, so Mary Tyler Moore Show, Mary Tyler Moore is like a news producer, and they have this news segment on their show called The Happy Homemaker with Sue Ann. And Sue Ann is this character that when she's on camera, she's like, and this is how you make the perfect turkey. And she's just like this bubbly housewife. But then when the cameras turn off, she's sleeping with everyone's husband, you know, like
it's my brand. That is my brand. Like,
and the writers of it in the writers' room, they were like, we need someone so sweet, somebody disgustingly sweet. We need a Betty White type to play this.
Long story short, they got Betty White.
They didn't get a Betty White type. They got Betty White.
So huge career move for Betty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, her role was meant to be this like one-time cameo, but she ended up being on the show for the next 4 years. Like like, this is a staple. She hadn't been in a TV sitcom in a recurring role in almost like 20 years. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it was like a whole new generation. We're getting to see her comedy, like her timing. Like, we've been talking about that. And when we tell you this girl had comedic timing, y'all.
It was
like, I look up to that, and I like to pride myself on my timing. And she is genius.
She's so good. She knows how to hold that silence until the exact right point.
And she can just like turn her eyeballs to the left just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's the timing that you need, and you bust out laughing.
It's
just that
the subtlety of the humor.
Genius.
And just how like, it's kind of something you can't even put into words. You have to go watch it. If you guys haven't watched her on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, I suggest you do so.
Brilliant. So she won an Emmy in 1975 again. And in 1976 for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy again.
Right?
Second Emmy. But not the last. Not the last.
It was her quote unquote breakthrough role, even though she had been steadily acting for like the last 20 years. And I think it's so cool though that considered her breakthrough role, even though she's already a household name, was was when she was in her 50s.
I love it. I
love a good 30 under 30 list, but I also love hearing of people like breaking through in what they're passionate about later in life.
A cougar countdown.
A cougar countdown. I fucking love it. So that Mary Tyler Moore Show went off the air in 1978, but Betty was still steadily working along with Alan. Like they were still doing game shows. He was still hosting Password. They were
It's
still
a fun
doing
gig. It's a fun gig. Like
they
that's
were going on
totally
the Carol
fun
Burnett
gig.
show. Her and Carol Burnett were buddies. Like they were just a power couple, like we already said.
Yeah, and then tragedy struck. I hate to be like the
I
burn
know.
burn.
I know.
I
There's
don't know
no
what that
there's
is.
no fun way to transition into
No.
this either. It's just like they were on top of the world until they weren't in
Yeah, and
1981.
he ended up being diagnosed with stomach cancer and literally passed away a year later, which honestly,
I don't
it
even
was
think it was a
quick.
whole year later. I think it, like within the year, like he was
Yeah,
diagnosed in 81 and he died in
but
81.
to be honest with you, that's how I would want to go. Like I wouldn't want it to be dragged out
I
over 5 years.
guess.
I was just quick,
I
done, bye.
guess.
But it was just 5 days shy of their 18th anniversary. Why does she do this to me?
I know.
She has a thing with anniversaries and birthdays,
Oh
and
God, just missing them. But Betty was obviously devastated. This was the love of her life. She never married again. As far as we know, she never had any kind of romantic relationship
Mm-mm.
again. She would tell Larry King later down the line when he was like, "Why didn't you remarry?" She goes, "Once you've had the best, who needs the rest?" And
death.
oh my God.
Love
Also,
her.
I feel like it was also, I don't know about you. I was lucky enough to know 3 of my great grandmothers. And
no, I wasn't.
and they're the same, they're like the same age as Betty. I think maybe like 5 or 6 years older, but in around that age. And 2 of my great grandmothers lost their husbands in the 70s, and even though they lived until the 2000s, they never remarried. So I think it's also a bit of a generational thing
Yeah.
of once you've had the
That is my
love of your life.
husband.
Yeah,
My husband.
it's just like, why would you
You have
even
to
look
say it with a southern
for
voice.
the husband?
My husband.
But I think it was also a generational thing. Also, she was heartbroken, as you would be.
Yeah, and she lay low for a couple of years. Like from his death until 1983, we just don't see a whole lot of her. She thought, like some people thought that she may retire at this point. I mean she's 60s. 60s.
She's been working nonstop since she was 18, so they've got some money stored away. She could retire. It's not a money thing, because if she wanted to retire now, she's got several shows in syndication. She can. He had money. She had money. She could have retired at this point if she wanted to, but that's not her lifestyle. That is not her thing.
Yeah, she doesn't like to lay low, does she? After a year of recovering from heartache, she was back, and she stayed back.
She did. She came back with a new game show called Just Men, which
sounds like my Saturday night.
I've missed this one. It was before our time, and I guess it didn't stick around for too long. But she won an Emmy for it. She became the first woman to ever win an Emmy for being a game show host. So she's just first on first up here.
I know, right? And she got public with her animal, let me say it, not activism. So
Not
she was
activism.
she was even like, I'm not a feminist activism. I'm not activist. She was an advocate. So
I wonder why she made that, because she did go out of her way all the time to be like, I'm not an activist, I'm an advocate. I wonder if that's because like activist sometimes has like a negative connotation with it, like with extremist.
That's what I was totally thinking is like activist means I'm going out and burning down the fence because I'm doing this, as opposed to an advocate who's like, hey, I'm here to support you,
all right,
as long as it's legal.
Yeah. She she'd always been a huge animal lover, but now she's like, I've got a platform, I've got the income, I'm going to be really open about my support of animals, her animal advocacy.
Oh, it's so cute. Like she's watched the Netflix documentary. She's feeding a grizzly bear.
Oh my gosh.
So cute.
In the book that I didn't read, I listened to the audio book, If You Asked Me. she talks a lot about all the pets that she's had over her life, and she narrates it, which is a delightful way to spend your time, listening to Betty White read her own book. Just the way she talks about her animals is so passionate and so compelling and so sweet.
Katie's in love.
I'm in love. If I wasn't already, I am now. But she talks about just how she would donate money to causes of like getting people that needed working dogs, like seeing eye dogs that couldn't afford them, donating money so that they could get the working dogs that they need.
Betty was on the board of a handful of animal welfare charities and organizations, as well as the LA Zoo board of directors. Maybe you've heard of it.
She worked towards funding like animals that, you know, were police dogs or other kind of working dogs. She worked towards charities that funded finding them good homes after they transitioned, like were too old to be working dogs anymore.
Yeah.
Herself, she adopted a seeing eye dog that had been retired named Pontiac, who was a very handsome golden retriever.
Would you do the handsome squish face?
Yes.
So one story really love was Betty was offered a part in the Jack Nicholson movie from the 90s, As Good as It Gets. Maybe you've heard of it.
Do you remember that movie?
I vaguely remember it. Vaguely.
Yeah, like I kind of remembered it, so I had to look it up. It has Helen Hunt in as well, and apparently it was like a huge fucking movie. Like it was a smash hit at the box office.
So in the movie, someone throws a dog down a garbage chute, which, what? Like Betty sees this and is like, I can't do this.
She was like, what if, like in the movie, the dog ends up being just fine. But she's like, what if a kid sees this in this movie and recreates it because they think it's funny? Mm-hmm. I can't live with and then that dog is hurt. I can't live with myself knowing I had anything to do with that.
She sees her influence.
And also, it's not like she didn't need the money, you know?
No.
I'm sure. Yeah. So
she's just fine.
And they wouldn't take it out of the film. And so she wouldn't be in the film. So that's why she is not in the Jack Nicholson smash hit As Good as It Gets.
So anyway, back to the 80s, because we love a good shoulder pad and some tacky colors.
Some bright blue eyeshadow.
Big earrings. So after a few recurring roles on sitcoms here and there, she is sent the script for a TV show, you know, you love. It's called The Golden Girls.
Thank you for being a friend.
Ba, 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 ba.
Who doesn't love The Golden Girls? I know, like, when it was actually on, it was a little before our time, but we grew up with it in syndication every afternoon after school, every sick day at noon.
It was just life. It was life.
Every summer, we'd watch The Golden Girls. It was just a show that I could watch with. I thought was funny. My mom thought was funny. My grandma thought was funny. We could all watch it
Everybody
together.
was on the same page.
Yes. It is so iconic.
And she was offered, guess the role that she was offered, Katie. I know you know the answer.
Well, based on her Sue Nevins character earlier, they thought that she would play the sex pot Blanche just perfectly.
I know. And she...
Okay.
Hot take.
Okay.
I think Queen's podcast has a hot take, and the hot take is I think she would have been great. I think she would have nailed it.
Yeah.
I think she would have nailed it. I think she would have knocked it out of the park because it's Betty White.
Yeah.
Like, for real.
She would have done great, but the director was like, you know what? Let's try you guys playing... Betty, I want you to play Rose, the dumb one.
And Rue McClanahan, you play Blanche.
Yes.
And Rue just hit it out of the park. And then I think it was one of those moments where you play the opposite of what you're supposed to. And then it just clicks. Like it was like, okay, that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened with the both of them was like Blanche, Rue McClanahan was supposed to play the innocent, young, like, oh, I'm from St. Olaf. But
Yeah.
then she played the slutty character, and it was like, whoa,
She just
that's
brought
perfect.
like this. Yes.
And so they just played off of each other so amazingly. But I can imagine a switch. Like, I can imagine them
But
switching.
I wouldn't want it.
But I wouldn't want it to happen.
Exactly how it is. Rose was just the fun. Like, they're all funny. All 4 of the main characters in this show are hilarious. But Rose is just a standalone kind of character. She just enhanced the show.
And
so much.
nobody expected this to be a hit.
No.
Like, this was about 4 old ladies in Florida retiring. Like, this sounds miserable. Like, it sounds awful, but
everybody was like, this show is gonna, because all of the actresses on it had been working for years, and they were like, after this show, these 4 women are all gonna retire. This is gonna be the nail in their coffins. Nobody is gonna watch this show about 4 old ladies living in Florida. But
hindsight is 2020.
Like, they did. People did.
They made gold. It's called gold.
The Golden Girls aired from 1985 to 1992, and it was a huge hit. But of course, we don't have to tell y'all that. Y'all know the Golden Girls.
Everybody loves this show. I fall asleep to it every night, and Betty is just amazing. And once again, Betty. A whole new generation is introduced to Betty White. This is like, guys, we're working on like 3 or 4 generations now, and she's just in the 80s.
She keeps making her new breakthrough role. New generations keep being introduced to her and falling in love with her.
And she's that woman that can give you the ultimate punchline. Like, she's so good at doing that. And guess what? She wins an Emmy.
Again. In 1986, she won an Emmy again, 10 years after her second Emmy from the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
So that's 2. That's just 2 casual Emmys.
Well, that's 4 altogether now. Yeah. She was nominated for an Emmy every single year that the Golden Girls was on. And in the end, all 4 women would win an Emmy.
In 1992, B. Arthur decided to leave the show. And honestly, guys, you really can't do that show without any of them.
Well, they tried to do a spinoff without B. Arthur called The Golden Palace.
Not great.
They replaced B. Arthur with Don Cheadle. Probably not something Don Cheadle's put on a lot of resumes. It was not.
So there are some whispers that Betty and B had a feud that we'll maybe talk a little bit more about in our Patreon episode.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of broke everything up.
Also, I think B. Arthur was like, I want the show to go out while it's still popular. Because I mean, look at the last few seasons of The Office or Friends.
Oh.
And while people are still like you,
Use
and so
lube,
I think it was
Katie. Use lube.
Well, am I lying? Oh my
No,
God.
You're not.
Like, the last season of Friends was fucking painful. So I get it.
Office
go out while
too.
go out while people still like you. And so I get why B did it.
Okay, is it wild that we're this far into an episode and we're just now talking about what she's famous for? Like Golden
Or what
Girls,
she's most famous for. Like, what everybody knows her for is the Golden Girls. And we've been talking for an hour and a half and we're just now getting to it.
I know, right? And she's now like 63. Like, she's in her gigs. Like, that's awesome.
She got the gig that has made her most famous when she was 63. Like we were saying, don't stop chasing your passion. Go after it.
It'll happen. Okay, but now it's over and she's 70, so it's obviously time to retire, right?
No, of course not. It's Betty fucking White. She's not retiring.
She's got another 20-something years left in her.
Again, we're not going to list everything she did after the Golden Girls because we're just listing stuff. But during the 90s to the early 2000s, She basically guest starred on everything.
Yeah.
Family Guy, that 70s show, Boston Legal, game shows, talk shows. She just never stopped working.
Work, 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 work.
Work, work. If you're Betty, work, 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 work.
So she also started putting out her memoir. So there's 3 altogether.
She co-wrote a novel. Yeah, like this woman did not take days off. I feel like that mentality from the Hollywood on Television show just never left her.
Right?
She's
No,
like, I gotta always
correct.
be working. I gotta be working 5.5 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Go.
Yeah.
Yep. I completely agree. So her last memoir was from 2011, which Katie listened to on audiobook. Just listening to
Betty White talk. Okay. I knocked it out. Like, I was done with it in 2 days because
I saw this article that was like, don't call Betty White your grandmother because she never wanted children. And I was like, but I'm gonna. Can't stop me. I think she'd be okay with it. I think she would be fine with it.
Yeah, the book that I listened to, the audiobook, she won Grammy for best spoken word.
For reading a book.
Yes, for reading her audiobook. So now we've got Emmys, SAG Awards, Grammy. I bet she never expected to win a Grammy, but Grammy award winning Betty White.
Well, okay, but she was a good singer back in her day.
That's
true. I had listened to her sing and been like, damn, girl.
You're not wrong. So let's fast forward to the year 2010. This was a huge year in Betty's career at the young age of 88. She had a career renaissance, as people like to put it.
Yeah, she had just done that movie, Proposal with Sandra Bullock.
Have you seen that movie? I love that movie.
It's so cute.
It's cheesy. It's cheesy romantic comedy, but
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I'm not lactose intolerant. It's fine. After that, she got asked to do that Super Bowl commercial, the Snickers commercial. I laugh every time I see that commercial.
Oh, was that the one where he was like...
They're playing football, and it's like
Betty
White gets
stop
tackled.
riding me.
You're playing like Betty White out there. And then she goes, that's not what your girlfriend said last night. And I swear to God, every time she says, that's not what your girlfriend said last night, I can't help but laugh. It's fucking hilarious.
It is genius.
So
after that commercial, some guy in San Antonio, Texas, has this petition that wants Betty White to host SNL. So Betty had turned down SNL for a couple of times in her life, but her agent convinced her to do it. And guys, I remember it. I watched it.
I remember that one too. It was a Mother's Day special, and they had a bunch of women that had been off of SNL for years, like Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph. These people had all already left SNL, but they came back to do the Mother's Day special with Betty White.
I know. But she did tell her agent during the SNL rehearsals and everything, she was like, never again. But I mean, she's 88 and live television is very stressful.
In her book, she talked about specifically the quick changes, and having to read cue cards stressed her out the most.
I would be stressed out just being there.
Though she did say it made her feel better. Like Tina Fey would give her little hacks on how to handle some of, because she used to do live TV every single day, but it's been 70
years
60, 70 years.
It's been forever. So that same year, Betty starred in her last TV show called Hot in Cleveland.
I never saw that. I didn't have.
It's cute. It's
cute. I've never had TV Land, which is what I think it comes on. It's never been on any of the cable packages I had. So, but I know it looks cute. So good for her.
It is. It is cute. So in 2010 was also the year that Betty spoke out about her support for the LGBTQ plus alphabet soup community. So many of her friendships in Hollywood leading up to, she's always been a supporter.
Yeah.
Like, we can't deny that. Golden Girls is even, like, obviously
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus, like, forward.
And she had a long friendship with Liberace as well.
Mm-hmm. Also important to remember that in 2010, gay marriage was not legal. So, guys, remember that. It was a hot topic. So
it was a lot more controversial to support than it is now.
And she was quoted as saying, "I don't care who anybody sleeps with." Round of applause.
Yes.
If a couple has been together all that time, I think it's fine if they want to get married.
Yep.
We're giving applause.
True statements.
Mind your business, take care of your affairs, and don't worry about other people so much.
Mic drop. Fucking
applause.
Drop.
She lives for the applause, like Lady Gaga. Keep going, Katie.
No. During 2010, someone asked her, what do you think about this career renaissance you're having? And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I have never stopped working. And she hasn't. If you look at her IMDb, there's really, whenever when Alan died, she took a year or so off. But besides that, there aren't really any gaps in her resume.
I remember people saying to her, like, "Oh, you made a comeback," and she was like, "A comeback? I never left.
A comeback. Yeah,
I never left. I was here the entire time."
I love this story. Something else that happened in 2010, which she said was the highlight of her comeback year, was that in November 9th, 2010, her first career aspiration came true, and I'm getting goosebumps. The USDA Forest Service Department had a ceremony in Betty's honor and made her an honorary forest ranger. Isn't like they gave her a hat and everything? She'd always wanted to be a forest ranger, y'all. The chief of the U.S. Forest Service told her, "You're an inspiration for all of us to never give up on your dreams." And she said that during the ceremony, she could feel her father's presence. She could feel him there being proud of her.
Oh, my little gay heart is twinkling.
If that isn't the sweetest fucking thing you've ever heard, like that is so...
He would have been so proud.
I love this journey for her so much.
I know. I'm not crying. You're crying.
I'm crying a little bit. It's okay.
No, me too. So Betty carried on working as an actress and working for charitable causes for years. Her last performance as an actress was in 2019, lending her voice to the Toy Story movie franchise. But with the hit of COVID-19, soon she laid low afterwards.
We were all like, yes, Betty White, stay home.
Yeah.
Stay home.
We don't want to lose you too. Though this was a horribly divisive time in this country. We've been through a lot in the last 2 years, but it seems like everybody loves Betty White.
It was the one thing that America could agree on,
I know.
Masks, vaccines, we can argue. Betty White, no argument. We love her. And I feel like we needed something like that. And she was that for America.
She's immortal. She'll live on my silver screen in my television home. Golden Girls for life. I love her. But like you were saying, sadly,
on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2021, Betty passed away quietly at her home just 18 days before her 100th birthday.
Her and anniversaries and birthdays.
Her last words were of Alan, her husband.
I know. I read that and I wanted to cry.
Let's talk about this woman's legacy.
She is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest female career in fucking entertainment, and you better eat it.
8 Emmys, a Grammy, 3 SAGs, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
She's in the Television Hall of Fame. Y'all, we really had to skim over this career and the names of the TV shows and the achievements that she did because there's just so many. Like, she's insanely talented, beautiful, gorgeous. And who told you weren't photogenic? Fuck them.
They lied. But now finally got to retire at the age of 99.
And now she finally gets to retire and rest with her husband and her hundreds of pets that she's had over the years. And here's and cheers to the love of her life, Alan.
God. Cheers to what an amazing life. What a don't give a fuck attitude. I am going to do what I need to do, but do it with love and gratitude and just how to live a life as a class act to fucking Betty White. Raise a glass.
That fucking sparkle. That sparkle in her eye. Cheers, bitches. Clink.
All right, we'll catch you next time, guys.